So the other day I heard someone say, we're too small. We don't need human resources. Can you only imagine? I mean, just try to imagine the look on my face when he said that. I'm too small. Now, the attorneys that I work with, we have this phrase that we laugh about because, oh gosh, if I could have a nickel, no, with inflation, let's go a dime for every time I've heard it's never a problem until it's a problem, Pandy. We're too small. We don't have to do that. The sad part is, you do in many cases if you're a business owner or you're running a company. So I thought today's show should be on, are you really that small? My name is Pandy Pridemore. I'm a consultant here in the Cincinnati market, but I've got companies all over the country. And I thought this was just too good to pass up. We're here in the ICRC studio in Cincinnati, so we've got businesses, startups, great incubators, so great thoughts that turn into business, and then we've got these major corporations. And guess what? The government doesn't really care in many cases how small or how big. They're going to be watching you. And there are things that if you own a business, if you even run a business for someone else, you need to be aware of all the laws that surround you or that are watching over you and controlling, should I say, or guiding what you're doing. So let's go over. Let's go over all the government agencies that you need to be aware of. And let's see how many of them you were already aware of or how many of them that you are watching and listening to on a daily basis. Now, this is an exercise I do with new clients, especially new clients who don't have professional HR people. And sometimes they're amazed because they'll go, well, I've never heard of that group. And say, okay, well then we've accomplished, our time has been well spent. So let's start with the biggest. Everybody has heard of the Department of Labor. But did you know that there are over 180 federal laws that the Department of Labor has active right now that they oversee? 180. And if we go through the different divisions of the Department of Labor, let's talk about how they might affect you. The one that everyone seems to always know is OSHA. Yeah. Everybody's heard of OSHA. OSHA is about safety. The general duty clause is under OSHA. Everyone having a business should provide a safe and secure workplace. Okay. But there are many times when I'll look at an office space or I will be in in a place that's where they're renting or they're using temporary space and they don't think that OSHA applies to them because they're more clerical, they're more administrative. They're not a manufacturer. Pandy, that doesn't apply to us. In fact, it does. It absolutely does. So OSHA is not one that you're going to escape immediately. Then you've got wage and hour. The Division of Wage and Hour is a large organization, and most, I hate to say it, but probably not half, but a great majority of lawsuits in and under the Department of Labor are at wage and hours level. They oversee the Fair Labor Standard Act. They oversee the Family Medical Leave Act. Now, you could be too small for the Family Medical Leave Act. To be eligible for that, an employer has to have 50 or more employees within a 75-mile radius. But be careful with that definition because with COVID and so many remote workers, if your remote workers report in to a central office and you have 50 of those individuals reporting into the same office, you might very well have to offer FMLA. So be very careful about that particular law. But the Fair Labor Standard Act, much lower criteria for that. So think about overtime. Think about who's eligible for overtime. So not only when is it paid and when is it earned, but who's eligible. So wage and hour is overseeing and watching your use of the classifications exempt and non-exempt. They're looking at your 1099s when they may possibly be W-2 employees. Wage and hour is probably I've dealt with more wage and hour audits than I have any others. Wage and hour is minimum wage, minor compensation and hourly rates, how you can employ a minor. Remember, wage and hour has one of the biggest portions on your labor law posters. So not only does Ohio or states have a wage and hour division, but we're talking the federal government. So you really, really good chance you may not be too small for wage and hour. And then, of course, everyone has heard of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. The EEOC is most known for overseeing Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, everyone knows Title VII as the discrimination clauses. You cannot discriminate against race and religion and gender. Now we're adding sexual orientation, sexual identity. And everyone's pretty comfortable with that. I think you can't be too small to discriminate. And you got to be really, really careful about thinking that you can hide under your size, because maybe you've got the revenue that qualifies you. I had one client that had 4 employees and they were doing over $10 million with just 4 employees. That changes the game altogether, but maybe not. ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, requires in most situations, you have to have 15 or more employees to have to hold to the Americans with Disabilities Act. But the EEOC oversees it. So if you are in that range of 15 or more employees, good chances you're not going to be able to escape that. And that's one of those situations where, if I can tell a secret, almost everyone has a disability. I know, go ahead and laugh, but almost everyone has a disability based on the definitions of what's in the ADA right now. So are you too small for that? And as you're growing, are you making yourself aware of these type of situations? So what about ERISA? Employee Retirement Insurance Securities Act. This oversees all of your 401ks, your retirement plans, your simple IRAs, your employee benefits. My company offers DOL audits, and we review those specifications of, are you the fiduciary of your 401k? Do you understand all the guidelines and all the restrictions, the mandatory activities you have to have with employee benefits, with retirement plans? And let me tell you something, guys, you can't escape that kind of stuff either, because some of that has jail time associated. And how many times have you heard me say on the show, plausible deniability is not going to get you out of trouble. So, are you too small? One of the most common, or let's say the most talked about right now, is the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. For employers, DHS is always going to be, no matter what size you are, they are going to be looking out to see how you're doing with the employment eligibility form, the I-9. Whether you have 1 or 1,000 employees, you have to show that individuals are eligible for employment. And those forms are very, very specific. You have to complete them in a certain way. You have to maintain them for a period of time. You could only take certain documents, and you have to take them in a certain way. And with the situation of foreign workers coming into our workplace, we're watching those standards be challenged more and more. Here's my favorite. The National Labor Relations Board. Did you realize that even small companies You don't have to be unionized. You don't have to have a union in your workplace to have to follow the National Labor Relations Act. Section 7 of that act is very specific and has changed the way employers relate to their employees in major ways. I was just with a client the other day, and I was going over all of this with them in terms of the NLRB. And the production manager literally lifted his head and looked me straight in the eye and said, "What do you mean I can't tell my employees they can't talk about compensation? If I give somebody a raise, I don't want him telling the guy who stands next to him on the assembly line." Well, the NLRB, the board, has an act, NLRA, and that allows employees to talk about their compensation. They're allowed to talk about work conditions. They're allowed to talk about terms of terms of employment. If you're not aware of all this, you're not too small. You need to be aware of that. And then another agency that we cannot escape is the IRS. Think about it, guys. Look how involved the IRS was with COVID. They dug in. We have never, in fact, I guess they kind of started with the ACA. When Obamacare entered the picture, the IRS jumped in. So if you've got a company of 5 or 6 and you're offering healthcare, IRS is involved. If you've got payroll, the IRS is involved. And they want to know that you're paying the right employee tax. They want to know that you're paying into unemployment. They want to know that people are being paid correctly. And remember, the IRS even has guidelines around tax forms and how you apply taxes. You can't use a federal W-4 and the exemptions, the individual reports on that, for state taxes. You have to have a state form specific to that. So let's just keep going on that train of line. You have all the state laws. You have state laws, again, whether you have 1 or 1,000 employees. And sometimes, in many cases, the state law supersedes the federal because it's in the favor of the employee. So don't be naive and think that you are too small, because there are state labor law posters and there are federal labor law posters. So as soon as you start building up your company and you start building a team, please be aware that you've got all these things going on at the same time. And if you aren't able to keep up, that's okay, because there are labor law attorneys, there are HR consultants, there are lots of sources of information where you can educate yourself or have somebody who already is an expert in this come and help do them for you. I hope you enjoyed this topic, because this was a fast one. You've been listening to The Human Resource. Come and see us again.